Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're looking at a few little things that have been going on in the World of Warcraft pipeline, if you will, and a few developments that have been taking place. I want to start us off by talking about the feral changes, which I'm sure a lot of you in this channel are probably going to be very happy to discuss and take a look at. For those of you that don't know, Feral Druid has just been hit with a Blizzard midweek balancing. So on the PTR now, Feral has had a 5% aura buff added. Which basically means that our abilities, I mean, people have run the math, and I think it works out to like a 4.3% increase on any of our cat form abilities. Now, this is specifically for Feral. This won't affect Resto. This won't affect, balance going Feral affinity and all that kind of stuff. It won't affect your Sunfire. It won't affect your Star Surge, anything like that, if you were to go balance affinity as a Feral. So this is completely restricted to Feral, in its entirety. So this is good. This is good. I mean, overall, it's a positive change. It's showing that Blizzard is saying, look, Feral needs a little bit of help here. Feral is a little bit in the weeds. And this is good. I've seen feedback. People have come into the stream and said, twitch.tv/Shabbaset, by the way. People come into the stream and said, oh, this isn't enough. This is, a slap in the face with only a 5%, and we need more, and we need this, and we need that. This isn't going to help us get into raids. This isn't giving us, leader of the pack and innovate and whatnot and all that kind of stuff. And I get it. I see where people are coming from, and I get that frustration. However, I'm quietly optimistic. Well, I say quietly. I'm actually now publicly on mic being optimistic. I think this is a good change. Right, and I want to present this to people in a way that I'm looking at it, right? People are saying, oh, well, it's only a 5% buff. And I get that, right? But if you think about it, there are also specs that are now getting nerfed, right? So in this same pass, DK's been nerfed. I think Marksmanship Hunter's been nerfed. A few others have been changed around. I can't remember off the top of my head, but we've seen some nerfs to some other specs, and then we've seen Feral getting a buff. So if Feral's moved up and some other specs have moved down, suddenly that difference isn't as big, and maybe even Feral might be able to kind of jump up a few notches and comfortably beat some of those tank players. So this is a good change, and this isn't a Wednesday change, right? So this is something that's happened midweek. This could be a prelude to what could happen on the coming weekly change. I think the 14th of October, we could see some changes coming in. The Feral, we might see, who knows, people wanting leader of the pack, innovate, and all that kind of stuff. Maybe some of that comes in on Wednesday. We'll have to wait and see. Or maybe there's just some additional specific damage buffs that are going to be affecting certain spells and whatnot. I think all in all, this change isn't going to help you get a raid spot. Really, I don't think many raid leaders out there are going to say, oh, well, let's bring a Feral now because they do slightly more DPS. I think we are still going to struggle in that region, but I think it's a move in the right direction, and at least Blizzard is aware that we need a little bit of assistance, so hopefully more of that will follow. And in more recent news, there's a change coming to the diminishing return that is now going to be affecting secondary stats in Shadowlands. Now, this change was initially announced a couple weeks ago, and I think it has started kind of oozing into the beta. So now if you attain over a certain percentage of secondary stats, then you will start to see a diminished return on that investment. So once you go above 25%, say, crit, then you start to get a penalty for each additional point of crit that you continue to invest in. It was only like a 10% penalty, but then if you go beyond that, if you go to 34%, then it was a 20% penalty, and then a 30% and a 40% penalty. And eventually you were not able to go above a certain percentage of secondary stats, which was capped at 106%. If you were, say, going like heavy mastery or something like that, you just weren't able to go above 106%. They've recently just changed it now, just yesterday, and they've said that you can now go up to 30% instead of 25% penalty free. Very kind of you, Blizzard. I think this change is very, and now the cap of that is 126%. You could not go beyond 126% up from 106%. Blizzard is looking to put this diminishing return on secondary stats, and I think it's for a couple of reasons, but it still, to me, is a little bit baffling as to why they're trying to do this, right? The rationale I can see from their side is that they want primary stats to be more impactful. If the weight of secondary stats is lower on gear, then you're more likely to take that item level upgrade, say it's a 10 item level upgrade, it's not going to be a case of, oh yeah, but this is really good secondary stats for me. It's going to be a case of, this is the higher item level, I'm going to equip this. And I feel like that is a good philosophy to a point. If something is a 20 item level upgrade, it should just flat out be an upgrade, right? Like, it's 20 item levels. That should be significant with stamina, with intellect, whatever it may be. That should be significant. However, I feel like kind of manipulating this artificially and putting this on players is not a fair way to do that. I think a better way would just be if they just nerf the amount of secondary stats on gear. I think that would just be, in a sense, better, because at least it makes a lot more sense to the player. The issue with this diminishing return system right now is the fact that there's no warning in game. There's nothing in game to say, hey, just a heads up, if you equip this ring right now, you're gonna lose 20% of the amount of stats on this because you've gone beyond a threshold. Feels like taxes. I guess in a sense it is, but you feel like you don't want to go into that new bracket, so it kind of puts you off from, you know, before you used to be able to go heavy crit, heavy haste, heavy mastery, whatever it may be, and you could invest in that and shape and mold your character in that manner. But now with this diminishing return change, it's a case of, well, I don't want to go above 30% because then I'm going to get a penalty, so I'm just going to get 30% on everything. I imagine that won't end up being the case, but it's you know, you get the point, right? It's going to be a case of less molding and shaping of your character, and more so just a case of taking that item level. There are pros and cons to this, and I see what Blizzard are going for, but it just, I think there's a way that they could show this better in game. I feel like showing it, or not being able to see this in game and having to come to a website like Wowhead to get that information is not the best. So maybe just putting secondary stats lower on priority on a piece of gear would ultimately be better. But let me know what you think. Do you see this having any unforeseen changes? Let me know in the comment section below. But yeah, I mean, I think this could ultimately just kind of try and stop just scaling out of control as patches go by, but we'll see. Alrighty, and the last thing that I wanted to bring to your attention today is the recent change to the conduits. Now, for those of you that don't know, originally the way it worked with the conduits and the soulbinds is that there was kind of a random array of potency, utility, and defensive conduits. And then Blizzard said, look, let's make this more uniform, let's make this more fair, let's put 3 potency traits on every single tree. That way you always have the option to get 3 potency conduits. And then Blizzard made a recent change where they said that you can now, before conduits were on a weekly lock, right? You could only change conduits once a week. They've then changed that and said, all right, well, you have a minimum of 10 changes every single week. Now, if you think about it, if you have 3 potency conduits to change every time that you want to swap spec and whatnot, then you're going to have to use 3 of those potency changes each time. And if you're limited by 10 a week, then this is going to be quite impactful. It doesn't really divide evenly. You're kind of having a bad time, right? So I think Blizzard has said, hey, let's reduce the amount of potency traits or conduits to 2 in each tree. And then this way, when people swap each week, now they have 5 changes that they could potentially make rather than, say, 3. And so I think this is kind of a change to cover their asses a little bit and make up for the fact that they've made a change to the amount of conduit changes that you can make per week. So you can see how it's the butterfly effect of how they've changed one system, which has had a knock-on effect for now this system. And this would be fine, but I was using a really good Soulbind conduit setup, which was in the Korean Nightfade tree, and it meant that I had 2 potency traits and 2 defensive traits. But now that has changed to 1 potency and 3 defensive if I want to get my 20% crit uptime, which is a really impactful change. So now I'm not going from 2 potencies, I'm going, or, 2 or potentially 3, I'm going to 1 or potentially 2, which is quite severe, as Feral really only had 2 good potency, or 2 good potency conduits anyway. So this is quite an impactful change, and it really is going to depend on what tree you are using and how many potency conduits you are using and how that all aligns and where they've made this potency change. All in all, I think they should just kind of reverse this and reverse the whole conduit change being limited to 10 per week. I think they should just say, look, if you want to change your conduits, feel free. We already change our talents, we already change our specs, we already change our legendaries, we already change like all of these things, pieces of gear, fight by fight, trinkets as well. I mean, we change all of these things fight by fight, depending on the boss, depending on the mythic plus key, whatever it may be. Why not just allow us to change conduits as well? We can already change the soul binds anytime we want. To me, it just seems like an unnecessary prevention and an unnecessary wall that Blizzard is putting in place. And now because of this, they're having to backtrack and make corrections in these other systems to account for these changes. Let me know what you think though in the comment section down below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.